Greetings, everyone. I am Dr. Deeksha Sharma from Cornell University, and my work is in emotional intelligence and anything related to mental well-being and emotions. And today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, fingerprinting your emotions. With, why, when, and how of the emotions. Now, imagine you are at a crime scene where you see a detective looking out for clues using fingerprinting to catch the criminal. Similarly, when you are going through an emotional trauma or an episode, it is important to collect the cues and connect the dots to find out the source and to work on them to find out what exactly is happening with you. And this is what we call as fingerprinting your emotions. And here, to fingerprint our emotions, we're going to use these three questions, which I talked about, which are basically why of the emotions, when of the emotions, and how of the emotions. But before we delve into these questions, let me go back to what are emotions. So emotions are nothing but the reaction or response to a stimuli. And these emotions generate feelings within us. And if these feelings persist for a longer run, they turn out to be our behavior. So we have to look into what we are feeling. And when we are able to manage these emotions, we become better in our behavior. So what is emotional intelligence? It is nothing but the ability to manage and understand your emotions. Very simple. And this EI has a great impact on our behavior, and not only on behavior, but on well-being and happiness. So I'll take one example here. In one of our studies, we found specifically for students that how students with higher emotional intelligence, having higher ability to manage their emotions, were having lesser affinity towards smoking behavior. Interesting, right? And good for them. But we found that in 2020, when we were conducting a study, that how the scores of emotional intelligence actually dropped from 2018 to 2020. So this is something we have to look into. And the problems may be many. The problems may be the financial issues. The problems may be the inability to understand what's happening to their health and the fear of the future, and so on and so forth. And not only that, in 2020, we did one more study where we found that how EI is predictive of the happiness. So it is important to understand that emotions drive many things in our lives, so we have to work around it. And how I started focusing specifically on students, I always did. I have an experience of working around students and helping and counseling them for their personal and professional development. But in 2020, when I started a podcast called Students of the World, where I tried to connect with students and communicate with them and understand that what exactly they were going through in these unique times of COVID, I found that irrespective of which country they were from, like maybe from South Africa, from India, from Australia, maybe from United States, or they were from Colombia, Israel, every student was facing almost a similar situation, even if the culture was different. And that gave me a platform to understand that this is so important at this hour, that the need is to help and support our students on a global platform. Now, let's go back to our question. So I've already answered half of the question of why of the emotions, through emotional intelligence. But we'll take one more thing, that is this ability to manage your emotions, that is emotional intelligence, also just not impact your well-being or happiness, but also impacts your productivity, your decision-making, and the time you take to conduct a task or perform a task. Now, that's very interesting. And this is a short rendezvous of, why of the emotions. Now, let's go to the another question, which is basically when of the emotions. So to understand that in terms of students' life, I will be taking into three slots in the timeline, where the first one is the pre-COVID, the other is mid-COVID, and then is the post-COVID. Now, talking about the pre-COVID times, these are the good times. But then again, students were going through many challenges, like the sense of belonging, the performance anxiety, whether they will be able to get the right grade in the school or not, or whether they'll be able to get selected in the right school or not, then to the identity crisis or the inability to make good friendships and good relationships, just not in schools or with their friends, but also in their family. But the thing was, it was still solvable on the aspect of, because these were the case studies, before these students, their seniors and alums have also gone through the similar situations. So the counselors and the mentors knew that how to handle them. And even the students who were going through those problems, they knew that, my seniors went through almost a similar kind of issue, and even I can get through. So they had examples. They had people who could sit with them and talk to them. Hey, I went through the same thing. I had a panic attack just because of this situation, and I was able to sort myself out with this process. But then COVID hit. In the mid of COVID, everything got haywire. The situations were different, the challenges were different, the level of stress and anxiety was different. So it was a big challenge for the counselors and mentors to even understand the situation, because it was new for them as well, just not for the students. And if we talk about students, especially with my experience working on the podcast where I interviewed student one-on-one, and I found that irrespective of which country they belong to or culture they belong to, or for which degree they were for studying for, they were going through a sense of loneliness. And the oxymoronic thing was that they were in their homes with their loved ones, the most safe, like the safest place they could be on. But they were going through this issue. And that was the biggest challenge, which I believe, which we need to cater to right now. So there is a problem of sense of belonging, and the transit from the schools to the home to work, on their classes and lectures from home, and not having the sense of belonging of different club and activities, not be able to meet people. And especially the students who were in final years and were about to leave the college, or the students who were about to enter from high schools to these colleges, they were the ones which were hit the most, because they were already in this mode of transferring their environment, and they were not able to do just sitting and changing themselves and evolving themselves from their home. So the challenges were bigger. And now I would like to go to the post-COVID time. I think these are the most challenging and anxious time for students. This is the process of, the post-COVID at present. And why it is so anxious for students, it is because it's a hybrid system. The students just don't have to look into that what they're going to study and how much the grade they're going to get, but also they have to make sure that they're coping up with this hybrid class system of offline and online. And then there's locking and unlocking because of the pandemic and the clusters happening because of the infection rates. So everything is so dynamic, and they have to always be hustling and be at par with those changes. So that's another problem, I think, which the post-COVID is showing to the students. And not only that, but United Nations themselves said that these 18 months was a huge loss for the students on not having the class experience. But I believe it is just not the class experience, but also their growth was hindered on the aspect of, social, personal, and emotional attributes. So we have to look into it, and we have to help students, because there is a gap in their growth, which is our responsibility to fill in as schools and colleges, as mentors, as professors and teachers. Now, having said that, let's go to the how of the emotions. Now, in most of my talks and my sessions and workshops, I ask a very simple question: how are you feeling? And most of the students answer me that, I don't know, it's very complicated, and they don't know how to answer this question. They are not fine, but they say that I'm fine. And this can be answered in a very beautiful way by Dr. Lisa Feldman, who gave an amazing concept of granularity of emotions, suggesting that how the ability of differentiating emotions which you're feeling simultaneously is something of importance. So for example, think that you have been selected to an amazing school, maybe Harvard, and you are really excited and happy, but on the other hand, you are also anxious and you are fearful that whether you will be able to cope up with the the projects and the syllabus and everything. And you're kind of sad to leave your family also. You're going to miss them. So a lot of things are happening. So how are you able to differentiate those feelings at the same time? Interestingly, Dr. Lisa told that how we are able to have this granularity that able to make the difference for, for a kid and for an old man. So they are able to make the difference between what they're feeling, but the young adults, they're not able to. And that's why our focus should be on the young adults. Well, there are millions of emotions. There are millions and millions and shades of emotions which we go through, because every moment our conscious and subconscious mind is doing a lot of things which we don't even realize. And that is why it is important to understand what happens to you when you feel something. And that is the how of the emotions. Now, we have majorly understood the fingerprinting of emotions, right? Now let's understand the mantra to actually manage these three questions, which we have just discussed, and how efficiently can we actually do the fingerprinting of our emotions. And for that, I came up with a theory, which is very simple, affect theory. So it's AFEC. So A is for acknowledging your emotions. It is important that you accept your emotions. That's the first thing. Don't run away from it. Then F is face your emotions. That is basically, should not get intimidated by it. Don't run and don't get intimidated. Let it come and let it absorb in you. Then E is basically embrace your emotions, which is actually about, hugging your emotions, cherishing your emotions, and don't letting it go away, So if you're feeling sad, don't let it go away. Try to cherish it, and I'll let you know how we can do that. And that is from the C, which is channelizing your emotions. Now, this is the hardest part, I should say, to channelize it. So for example, if you're angry and fearful, it's very difficult for you to channelize, right? But what if you can convert this anger into something more disciplined for yourself, or maybe you become more diligent for your work. You get up early in the morning, go for a jog, or you may be able to start painting, or you are maybe able to learn music or something like that. So you have to channelize it. It's easier said than done. It looks easier, but it's a very subtle process. The whole affect process is going to be subtle. It's going to happen step by step. There'll be most of the times you're going to fail, but you have to get up and do this affect strategy. And I'll take an example here. One of my students way back in 2016 in India, in Indian Institute of Technology, which is one of the premier institute, when he entered the college, I got to know that he had no idea about how to use the electronic gadgets. And I was wondering, how is it possible? And then I realized that even the most underprivileged backgrounds can take the exam, and if they have the diligence and intelligence, they can get selected because it's a pen and paper exam. And he did that. But he had no idea of using the electronic gadgets. And I was like, how is he going to write the papers? So we helped him to actually learn the computers, to how to write a paper and everything. And that gave me a reverence and respect for him. And I was inspired by him. But then he was intimidated by his peers and the teachers and the mode of education and the, a different environment where he was in. And for that, I requested him to actually use this affect theory, and he did it. And now he's working for a very big multinational company. I'm really proud of him. So definitely this affect theory works, but it's a subtle process. He actually used it for 4 years of his undergraduation. And that's why he was able to build himself as a confident man. So I will suggest to you, try to use this affect theory. And I understand that it is difficult for students at this point of time to manage and to be more dynamic. And most of my work, my research, and my initiatives, which are in terms of my talks, my podcasts, my workshops, they corroborate that the most vulnerable community at this point of time is actually of the students, and we have to help them. So just like the detective at the crime scene was able to find the clues through the fingerprinting, it is important for us to work on the these traumas in a form where you are able to do the fingerprinting of these emotions with these 3 questions and look into the source. And I will request all the students to try this theory so as they can work on these 3 questions with the strategy and they can come as winners. So with this, start investigating. Thank you.